Dan Westgarth, COO of Deel, processing 22 billion of payroll annually.
This stuff can be a huge distraction to small startups that haven't found PMF. They just kind of like pass this onion, and each time they peel the onion, their eyes get more watery, and it's just like, oh my god. Customers are able to consolidate payroll and HR systems into Deel, and then they want to make connections to accounting. And if they're using one of the incumbent softwares, it takes a long time.
Still crazy how much opportunity there is to make this seamless. And Deel just announced a $300 million Series E funding at a valuation of $70.3 billion. What's the next big inflection point?
I think that's going to be game changing.
Welcome to Tech Finance. I'm your host, Sasha Orloff, repeat founder and current CEO of Puzzle, and self-professed finance nerd. On this show, we dive into the pulse of B2B fintech, from newly funded startups transforming the office of the CFO to major industry shifts, deals, and partnerships that are reshaping how we think about finance. You'll hear the most important developments, essential analysis, and of course, AI innovations. This show is brought to you by Puzzle and the Turpentine Podcast Network. Let's dive in. All right. Well, welcome to Tech Finance by Turpentine, which is now part of the A16Z Podcast Network. This show is for founders and finance teams where we uncover the people, stories, and strategies shaping the future of finance and accounting. And today we're in for a special treat because I'm joined by Dan Westgarth, who is the COO of this little tiny company called Deel that you might have heard of. Deel is building the global infrastructure for work, and they're currently processing 22 billion of payroll annually, 35,000 customers, 1.5 million workers in 150 countries. And Deel just announced a $300 million Series E funding at a valuation of $70.3 billion, co-led by Revolut Capital, alongside Andreessen Horowitz and Co2. Dan's our COO, and if you don't know him by name, Dan was early at two of the fastest growing, most incredible companies, probably of all time, Revolut and now Deel. So this show is going to be packed with insights. Let's go. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey man, first of all, thanks for having me. How are you? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I got to know Dan when he was just a young pup at this little tiny company that nobody had heard of at the time called Revolut.
Yeah, we were taking Revolut to the US, and that's how I got introduced to Sasha.
Yeah, totally operationally heavy and regulatory complex. It's like, I guess that's your specialty. Like a global, massively complicated, operationally heavy, insane businesses. The thought of building like a global financial powerhouse and then a global payroll powerhouse was like kind of unheard of, right? It was like HSBC back in the day. So when you think back, I guess let's just dive into it. When you think back at Revolut, wait, was that your first job?
Yeah, exactly. So I was maybe 20 years old when I joined Revolut. I actually dug out the emails and shared them on LinkedIn, and like they're buried in the comments somewhere. But yeah, I joined Revolut before I finished my undergrad. I was initially working with them as a campus ambassador, and the mandate was spread the word of Revolut, hand out flyers, hand out cards, like go to the different societies within Newcastle University. And I was pretty good at that. So they eventually offered me a job, and I did a little bit of customer support, a little bit of operations, eventually transitioned into product management. And then my final role was general manager on the expansion operations team. I think Revolut took an internet first approach to banking, or a tech first approach to banking. And it started in the UK. And if you double click on the UK banking market, most of the banks have been around for over a century. Like some of them were founded in the 1800s, and there were very few entrants to that market. And I was pretty inspired by that. Banking customer experience in 2015 was pretty dull. You'd be lucky if you could get a smartphone app. And if you had a problem, you would phone in and you would wait there for 30 minutes, and the whole process just sucked. So Revolut was really cool. And taking internet first approach, they were building everything from the ground up. And I think the early team, the founding team, they really practiced first principles thinking, and they weren't bankers. They didn't have experience in building retail banking products or credit card products. They were just really smart people that they wanted to rebuild from the ground up.
And went from zero to a $65 billion valuation currently, and don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Right. 75 actually, I think.
75? What do you think when you look back? What do you think is something that is underappreciated about Revolut that you saw from the inside?
Yeah, I think doubling down on that point I made previously, the fact that the entire founding team. And for sure, the first 20 people, but maybe even as far as the first 100 people, with one or two exceptions, had no experience in banking or card processing or building financial products. They were just smart people who wanted to figure it out and build it up from the ground. So we were very problem focused, practiced first principles thinking in just about every single domain. And I think that laid the foundation for a great company, not only by way of product and business, but also by way of culture. And quick segue, I think that's really what I saw in the deal story, in the deal founding team. It was actually a mutual investor, I won't say who, that had a position in Revolut and also invested in Deal, the seed or pre-seed that introduced me to the founders over there.
Nice. When you look back at your time at Revolut, what's something that you're the most proud of?
I think for me, it was the banking infrastructure because I had a big part in that, like connecting Revolut into the UK payment system, the single euro payment system, the SWIFT system. And it was very difficult to figure that out. We were told no so many times. At the time, we were a prepaid card with an electronic money license. And we said, oh, we want to connect this thing to the UK banking system and to the euro banking system. And everybody told us no. And it was just a case of kind of like chipping away at the subject matter and figuring out how it worked. And then we're like, oh, okay, this is who we need to go to. This is who gives access to banks and other financial institutions. This is how we'll get access. Yeah, I'm really proud of that.
Well, we transition back over to Deal, which is sort of your job now as CEO. What's something that you think is really underappreciated outside about Deal that you get to see from the inside?
I think it's how we come together as a team, which sounds like a bit of a cliche answer. But one of the measures that we've got inside Deal, and it's not something that we measure consciously, it's just something that I've picked up on, is that we use the love heart emoji quite a lot. I see that on posts. And I think that that is really symbolizing the team coming together cross functionally around the world. We're in over 80 different countries when it comes to internal employees, or dealers, as we call them. So it's a truly global, truly multicultural company. And I don't think the outside appreciates how much we come together as a team.
When you think about the complexity of building any company in person, let alone globally, how do you think about sort of taking like the concept of scalability, like what's done by humans, what's done by software, what's done by AI? How do you think about that as you're trying to manage a global operation across lots of countries?
Mhm. I think one thing that we quickly realized the deal at actually setting up processes with humans is probably the quickest way to get to market. You don't need to build software. You don't need to build workflows. You don't need to do API integrations, and you can stand up processes incredibly quickly. So if I need to move data from one system to another and validate that data, it's quite easy for me to write an SOP and to have humans do that. One guy copies the data, another guy validates the data, and another guy then validates that. That can be stood up in like 12 hours in a day, basically. Today with AI, that is a little bit easier. Like maybe you can do that in 10 minutes, but that's not the case for many different workflows. AI is really good at operating inside of its own environment and operating cross environment where the connectors exist. But if you're going from two completely disconnected systems, which we see a lot in Office of the CFO, it's actually pretty easy to do that with humans. So our approach at Deal was indeed that. And then over time, as those workflows got bigger and more busy, we would build out the software to automate it.
So when you think about that, there's got to be a blend between centralized decision making and decentralized decision making. How do you enable a global team to operate successfully? And what are your sort of tricks for accountability?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the size of the company. At Deal, we're over 7,000 people, so we have to work on a decentralized model. We have to give we have to give our functional leaders and our regional leaders the power to make their own decisions. I've seen companies that have tried to centralize decision making at this size and it just doesn't work. They all grind to a halt. So I'm a big fan of decentralization.
So much of people's careers are influenced by their first real job, right? It's sort of like that's just the way it kind of goes. You were fortunate enough to go into a place where first principles thinking and global ambition was just kind of part of the DNA. That's really cool. Is there anything that or what are the things that you took from your experience at Revolut over to Deal? Because you guys still seem to be on quite a tear, growing quite fast globally.
I think in operations and in product to a certain extent, there are an unlimited amount of problems to be solved. You can work tirelessly 365 days a year solving problems, whether it's internal problems or problems to the customer or problems with the product. So I think Revolut taught me quantify the impact of the problems to be solved and then pick the highest impact ones and focus on 3 to 5 of those problems at any point in time. And I would say that we do a really good job of practicing that in the operation and product functions at Deel, but also personally as COO. It's like, what are the 3 to 5 things that I need to do this week that will move the needle for the business?
What does that process look like for you? Just like how do you keep track of things? And then who are your direct reports? How many direct reports do you have and what are their roles?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a mundane answer to the question, but I'm very old school. I have a to-do list, which is just Apple reminders, and I sort it between high priority and low priority. The high priority things need to get done by the end of the day, and I won't stop until they're done. And then the low priority things, you can shuffle them around. So I think it's just building out the discipline of being able to clear that every day, which builds a lot of momentum. How many direct reports do I have? Well, it fluctuates from time to time. So the first thing to note is that at this level, functional leaders should be running the function themselves for the most part. They should be coming to me saying, hey, Dan, these are the objectives that I want to hit. Hey, Dan, these are the hires that I want to make. Hey, Dan, these are the updates. And I'll be a soundboard and counsel for them, and I will energize them and I will help them. But they don't really need management in the traditional sense. So if I look at my direct reports, it's typically the functions that aren't in a position that I've just described. It's typically the functions that need some form of management or perhaps even micromanagement. It's the functions that need some help. It's the function that needs some kind of repair and restore. So my number of direct reports floats at around just over 20. And that includes 4 chief of staff, which we call the Ghostbusters. Their mandate is to go in and find the ghost and bust the ghost.
I love that.
They're primarily working with myself and Alex, the CEO, on just anything which needs to be solved quickly. And that can change day to day, week to week. So it's a pretty fun role for them.
So I met Alex and Shuo like early on before the pandemic, and they were sort of starting this company, which we used early on in our hiring. I think there's a perception that during the pandemic, Deal was one of the types of companies that was going to exist because we need to have this kind of remote thing. But then after the pandemic, these kind of some of these cute little like pandemic related companies would have gone away.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be the case at Deal at all. Still like continuing to grow at such a massive scale.
Yeah. I just think that our inflection point moment was the start of something that was way bigger than the pandemic. You know, we got started to help companies hire anyone, anywhere. A company would come to us and say, I want to hire an independent contractor in the UK from the US. How do I do it? And we provided the solution for them. And that just propelled us into the world of finance and HR, or payroll and HR. And there are so many problems to be solved. The bar is pretty low. There's not a ton of innovation. And we were like, okay, we're in this space now. We'll have a pool of customers. And that pool of customers are saying, well, can you fix this problem? Can you fix that problem? And we were like, okay, sure. And we had some pretty big names pulling us into different areas. And I think we've just continued to innovate and answer customer demand.
How do you think about the prioritization of stuff like this? Right? You're in different countries. You can go deeper in some countries. You can enter a new country. You can go broader. I can't imagine there's a shortage of things, especially as you continue to grow. How do you think about resourcing and prioritization as COO around something like that?
Yeah. So I feel like every product takes a certain amount of time to hit maturity. In a deal, it's pretty fast, but it still takes a couple of years. So if I think of the core products that we launched in business when Deal started, they're all pretty mature now. And that means they work well, the onboarding is good, the margin profile is good, the customers like it. Everything is kind of going great. And then you're kind of like, how do I throw jet fuel on that to make it grow even faster? So, by the way, throwing jet fuel on the product and on the business is a completely different set of skills and sets of priorities to what I'm going to go into next, which is the kind of startup business line. So over the past couple of years, we've launched a domestic US payroll system. We've launched what we call PEO, which is a method of co-employment in the States. We've launched Deal Immigration. We've launched Deal IT, and some of those were kind of aided by acquisitions. But in terms of prioritization, we want to get them to product maturity. We want to make sure that customers love the product and never want to leave. We want to ensure that the margin profile is correct. And I think we need to prioritize accordingly. Like, how can we get these products to maturity? as fast as possible? And on the flip side, how can we get these existing mature products to grow even faster?
How do you possibly manage something like that, right? Because it's like so many products, so different countries. You have like a certain level of customer happiness, you have a certain margin profile. What's your framework for deciding when to put jet fuel on, as you said, versus maybe shut something down or maybe pause, continue development and let it come into maintenance mode?
Yeah, so we have general managers over all of our business units today. So general manager will typically look after one or two products that are in a business unit that is somehow connected or related. And that works really well, actually. They're kind of like the mini CEO of that area. And they're responsible for growth and for optimization and managing customers. And that framework has worked really well for us. And I don't think we've invented anything new there. It's kind of textbook stuff.
Maybe teach me a little bit about how you think about sort of like managing a global operation. What's maybe some of the lessons learned or some of the advice you could give to other companies, founders that have ambition of scaling globally?
Hmm. It's like, okay, we're all from different parts of the world and there are cultural differences, but we all seem pretty similar in the way that we talk, in the way that we think, in the way that we speak, in the way that we socialize. And I think that's interesting. And I think you need to think of the world as one. I think that has a lot of power. And I think after that, yes, you need to then align your company's playbooks, align your company's rules, the handbook to all of these different countries. But first of all, just think of it as one. It doesn't need to be necessarily any different. I think that's on a cultural level. On a product level, it depends on what you're building. I think if you're building consumer products, then you really need to double down in that country and have people in that country and understand the local market. Understand, in our case, in fintech and finance, like what's the difference in payroll or accounting or payment rails? And that's really difficult to do on a global level. But if you're building kind of B2B SaaS, I don't think as much emphasis needs to be put on country. And you're actually able to do this kind of like global first model. And I think that's what we did at Deal.
When you think about some of the places where you have this sort of international group of people and they're all over, and like you said, there's this common mission of wanting to build Deal and make it the best company ever. What would be sort of an example of a story from maybe one of your larger anchor customers that really kind of, maybe it was one of your favorite things that you built? Maybe it was something that was really hard and a customer came to you and said, doubt you can build this, but like, hey, if you ever want to do this, or you had this vision of going this way and they were like, hey, let's go do this. And it just came out to be one of these 1+1=3 situations.
Yeah, okay. I've got a great example. So a lot of customers would come to us and say, hey, you're able to help us employ people in different countries, but can you help us renew their immigration documents? Or in some cases, can you help them get new work authorizations? And we're like, not really. Like, here's our partner. We can send them to the partner and the partner can process them. There wasn't a high degree of confidence in just outsourcing this to some kind of third party. And customers asked us, like, please, please, will you find a way to do this in house? And well, okay, fine. And the first move that we made was the acquisition of LegalPad. So we bought LegalPad, which is a US based immigration firm, primarily focused in building visa applications for founders. They were building O1 visa cases and founders were submitting them and then they were moving to the US and they were getting into YC or whatever else it might be. So making that first move on acquiring LegalPad and then figuring out how to do the same globally is a great example of this. And now we're processing visas and work permits in more than 100 countries around the world. And the customers are really happy. The business is growing more than 100% year on year. And something that's just more and more topical for us is something that we're really excited and interesting about.
Oh, I'm sure. So much of my perception of Deal's early story was about sort of hiring globally and sort of these sort of US companies, maybe perhaps that had employees or contractors all over the world. What was the thing that made you decide it was time to enter the US market as an official payroll company?
I think that we saw that a lot of our customers that were using us internationally wanted to have the US payroll in the same system of record. And it was just a no brainer, really.
Well, that was just too obvious. It makes sense along the way. There's something that's like, it's kind of a big deal. Do you know how many payroll companies the US has?
No idea. I think
No.
there's a lot. I think there's always got to be an international component. I don't think we'll be the solution that like wins the domestic market. It's like the business has to have an international component.
Right. So it's sort of this, you have this thing that maybe nobody else does. You can pay people all over. But having that combined in a single solution for a domestic payroll for at least US companies plus the international just really kind of consolidates and makes things easier.
Yeah.
Instead of having to consolidate like, oh, here's my US payroll for my US employees and here's my international payroll for my international employees.
I mean, you must see the same at Puzzle, right? Achieving consolidation across one system of record is just so important for HR and payroll teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, part of this is like what we do at Puzzle, but yeah, it's 80% of all of our operating expenses is people as a software company and managing them across, I don't know, how many countries do we have employees in now? 8 that I can think of quickly off the top of my head. I would say Deal makes this very easy. You just sort of put some stuff in and it works. But yeah, it's a huge amount of money in managing treasury and operations and pull and onboarding and offboarding and all the rest of the stuff.
By the way, we sketch out how a customer's HR and payroll stack looks. And you would be surprised. Like, first of all, if you think of all of the different platforms and we kind of draw these out on a process map as rectangles, and then you join the connectors, and it's crazy. Like, we very rarely see one central system of record. Like, connectors are going across each other to different systems, and it's just really messy. Things aren't instantaneous either. Like, a lot of those connectors are running on a batch process. So there's a lot of value through consolidation.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors. All right. One of my favorite tools that I use and we use is Notion. Notion is used by thousands of startups around the world as their connected workspace for everything from engineering specs to new hire onboarding to fundraising. Notion has a special offer for listeners. 6 months of free Notion with unlimited AI, value of over $6,000. So you can access the limitless power of AI right inside of Notion to build and scale your company and team with one tool. Get 6 months free of Notion with unlimited AI, along with custom templates when you apply for notion.com/startups/puzzle. Once again, that's notion.com/startups/puzzle. Go for it. I think you all remember that sound. It's the dial-up. Why would startups still be using accounting software from the 1990s? It's like running your company on dial-up internet. It's like raising a Series A on a fax machine or pitching investors with a flip phone. You wouldn't build the next unicorn with outdated tech, so why are you still running your numbers on it? Puzzle is leading a new movement, an AI-first ledger that eliminates the grunt work, updates in real time, and actually helps you make informed decisions. No more waiting, no more guessing, just the clarity you need it when speed matters. This isn't just accounting, it's the future of how businesses run. Join the movement today at puzzle.io. On that note, you guys work with so many companies, either thinking about it from an operations perspective or a payroll perspective or both. What do you see as some of the most common mistakes that startups make when they're first getting started off?
I just think going for more than one system. If you have somebody to hire in Canada, don't procure a new system. First of all, check if your existing one does support Canada. If you're a US business, it probably does. And if it doesn't, and you're going to be hiring more people from outside of the States, then get an international system from the get-go.
You know, I have to say, I've been quite in awe of Deal, both in your ability to work with very early stage companies and big enterprises. Really, that kind of bucks almost all traditional advice from people, which is like pick one ICP and just go for it and like leave that. And that probably does do some good for certain companies, but it's hard to not think about if the Revolut and the Deal teams listen to that and you guys listen to that advice, you never would have built the monster companies that you did. Any thoughts on sort of the advice of ICP focus? And how do you think about that with like global ambition and all this multi product building a monster company?
I think I'll like almost sidestep the question on advice and just talk a little bit about how we do it. So I think selling to the different segments is actually the easy part. I think it's pretty easy to hire a good enterprise sales team, a good mid-market sales team, and it'll take a little bit of time to finesse the formula and figure out exactly how to sell and exactly what your customers want. But you'll get there. You'll figure out how to sell to these customers. I think the most challenging part is actually onboarding and implementation. And at Deal, we have three different types of onboarding journey. The first is designed for SMBs. And it's basically getting the customer through the door as quickly as possible. And we don't have a set timeline. It's just like, how can we do it as quickly as possible? How can we get all of the customer's data? And how can we onboard them? And in some cases, we'll be chasing down the customer to get it. The second, which is designed for mid-market, is more of a structured approach. And it's a project managed onboarding with milestones and a Gantt chart and a project manager, and we'll do it to the customer's schedule. The final and most challenging is enterprise. And while it should really just be an extension of what I've described, it's challenging because the enterprise is going to want to do it their way. It's their way or the highway. Yes, they need the milestones, and yes, they need the Gantt chart, but they have their own protocols around how they're going to transfer the data. They have their own steps in the process. And you really just need to swarm and hug the customer in many respects, in the same way that the sales guys do. You really need to understand and respect that you're dealing with, in some cases, we're dealing with top 10 biggest companies in the world. Like, we're going to basically reinvent our process for them. And maybe a question back for you, like, what's the ideal profile of a puzzle customer and how do you approach onboarding?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I think we're learning now. And I probably wish I would have interviewed and asked you this question a year or two ago. I had this kind of naivety that people would just onboard, like they know how to onboard and they could do it. I underappreciated how much people get stuck into a way they do things. And you have to teach them not just that it's better, you actually have to, like you said, I like the concept of like hug them into happiness. Like, we know we have a better product, but it's different than how things are done before. It's much more automated. It's much easier to accomplish most of the things that you need to. And so it sort of transforms how you're able to operate. You don't have to stitch together all these things. Like, we do the hard data work for you. And so I think we're just learning now that actually helping people with onboarding makes everything happier. And what we learn just tactically is it doubles the lifetime value. It increases the NPS by, I think, 15 or 20 points. And it makes people happy. Like, they give us quotes and testimonials. And I don't think I appreciated that as much coming from a consumer background. But so with that, like, we focus on right now kind of that 0 to 10 million revenue journey of a company. You're just getting started. You're just setting up your bank account, your payroll, all of those things. And we're managing through. So as soon as you incorporate, you have to file taxes in the US every year, no matter what. And so that's kind of where our segment sort of really focuses. And that has been super helpful.
One thing that I do once the customer has completed onboarding, I send them an email. I have a script that generates the email and sends it out, but I get folks to reply and say, "Hey, is this really you?" Yeah, it's really me. And I'm just checking in and asking for their experience. And I think there's a couple of things. It shows them that we really care. And it also gives them direct direct contact to the leadership. And if I ever do get an escalation, which is pretty rare nowadays, it's so nice that comes to me and I can orchestrate and chop that up and slice that out and send it to the right people and have a squad together to solve the problem for the customer in a couple of hours. The customer doesn't need to go through several different levels of support and through the customer success manager, which, by the way, they can if they want to, but I just love to give every customer that's completed onboarding that method of getting in touch.
I love that. And for those of you just listening, and you could hopefully hear it in Dan's voice, but if you're watching on the video, you can see the like joy and happiness of getting to work with and talk with customers. I'd love to hear more about like what are some of your favorite parts about your job? Because we'll get into some of the more stressful things, but of one of the fastest growing, largest global companies in tech right now in space, what is it that gives you your energy, gives you your joy?
I was talking about this recently with some friends. I think one of the bliss moments in running a company is securing the hire that you really want, especially at leadership level when you've been courting somebody for a while. They say, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm going to join the mission." I think like one of the best moments ever. How about you?
It is. You constantly want to be surrounded by like the best people and the most ambitious people. How do you think about recruiting when it comes to it? Because you have ambition now, you're also setting up the foundation for the long term. Are you the type of person like when you find somebody, you're just like, I can't stop until I close this person? Or do you sort of just play the long game and you feel like they'll eventually get there?
Well, I think it's a little bit like the customer onboarding process. Kind of like your more junior hires, there's quite a lot of velocity. I think for your mid market through senior hires, you need a very very strong process with a lot of steps, with a structured home task, with an elevate interview, and then at the enterprise level for your execs, you're meeting the exec's requirements, right? But you're texting them or you're WhatsApping them, whatever is preferable, or you're doing calls, and you're usually courting them for a couple of months. A couple is too short. You're courting them for several to many months. They're getting to know you. You're watching them from the sidelines. They're watching you from the sidelines until there's kind of a point in time where you're both equally as excited, and it's like, actually, let's do this.
What do you view as the most one to two most important qualities in somebody that you want to hire? What are the non-negotiables?
Yeah, like this might be a little controversial, but I think they need to be able to sell. That means being able to sell internally, cross function, to be able to sell the product, to be able to sell the vision to new hires. And at the same time, they need to be very humble and have a strong nose for BS. And I think when I'm interviewing someone and like they're good, I think they're good at selling things, then I need to have a strong nose for BS. Are they just going to come in and sell me false dreams all of the time? Or are they actually going to come in and own the function and run the thing? So I think being humble, having a strong nose for BS, and being able to sell are non-negotiables. I picked three, but I think it's important to have all of those.
Well, I will say that I now have the benefit of getting to work with Deal at Puzzle. Your team has been incredible at building, very ambitious, above and beyond, like attention to detail, attention to the customer. It has been crazy how fast and ambitious the team has been, but also not wanting to cut corners, wanting to do it the right way. So, one that fully translates into what I see in the day to day of our teams working together. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how do you at Deal think about accounting? Like, why would a partnership with an accounting software in the United States be relevant? It might be counterintuitive to a payroll or a work company like Deal.
Well, first of all, companies come to us for payroll and HR. We were solving two big problems of office of the CFO. I think accounting is like the number one thing that our customers come to us for after those. And it's kind of crazy, you know. Customers are able to consolidate payroll and HR systems into Deal, and then they want to make connections to accounting. And if they're using one of the incumbent softwares, or maybe they're using a connector, it takes a long time. Like in most cases, they're having to manually download reports and upload reports, and then check journal entries. And they have huge teams of people doing this. So Puzzle is amazing because those journal entries are instant. Like as soon as they've run payroll, as soon as they paid a contractor, the data is automatically copied over and sent to Puzzle, and it's there. And it's instantaneous. And this makes a ton of sense for all of those reasons.
It's so strange. We will look back, I think, at this moment at the end of 2025, hopefully in a couple years, and this will be just the standard way that things operate. Like they operate in real time, they operate seamlessly, they can operate globally, and it still is not the case. Even if we just think about this, a company can be instantly set up now with accounting and compliance and global payroll in one click. I think it's non-obvious that not just the journal entries that get messed up, you basically get abstracted away from the details of like 80 or more percent of your entire expense base, right? You're uploading and downloading this is crazy. This is crazy. And so I know the team worked pretty hard for quite a few months to like build the API on both sides that matched and made this seamless so that you can just like abstract away. Like you want to hire somebody in another country, press the button. You want that to sync into your accounting software, it's just kind of done. Like I still can't come up with a nice answer to like why is this still not a thing anymore? Like why this is like crazy how easy it is that we've made it together. This like partnership. Why is this the way that this is done?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer either. I think we see it in different industries. You know, I talk to employees and contractors that live in like Caribbean countries or Latin America countries, and just receiving money, their paycheck also takes days. And sometimes there are fees attached to it. And sometimes the bank holds the payment. Like, why isn't it instantaneously? So, yeah, I would say that it's the number one problem for customers following payroll and HR.
So this is the third company that I've started and grown and scaled. And when I think back to how manual and how much time we had to spend 15 years ago just setting up a payroll, setting up a bank account, setting up your accounting, it was literally insane. I had to drive to Silicon Valley Bank's offices to open a bank account in my first bank account. I had to go buy a fax machine to fax ADP my payroll every 2 weeks. And then you're like, oh, I have this like insane candidate, like engineer who lived in Silicon Valley. And he's like, oh, like I got to move back to Canada or like London or whatever. And I was like, I don't, like, you're just done. Like, I can't hire you. It's crazy how much time it takes to set this stuff up. And like, I don't know why I'm talking about this other that makes me look old is like, it's still crazy how much opportunity there is to make this seamless. Like we're now just implementing this like integration to close your books with no manual work, understand your largest expenses, stay compliant and be able to hire all over the world. I'm so excited about what you guys are building. I'm so excited about what we're building.
I just think this stuff can be a huge distraction to small startups that haven't found PMF and they haven't really got any customers, they haven't really got any revenue, and then they just kind of like pass this onion, and each time they peel the onion, their eyes get more watery, and it's just like, oh my god, like all of the stuff that you've mentioned, we haven't even gone into payroll and HR yet. There are like another 10 layers there.
Like you said, you're not focused on product market fit. You're not focusing on your customers. You're just dealing with this like operationally scary, compliant, and completely necessary back office stuff.
Speaking to a few founders based in the Valley right now that are 20, 21 years old, that are doing this for the first time. It's going to be a huge distraction for them. And they have even less business experience than we do. So, yeah, I think consolidate from day one and pick the right vendors, pick partners that are going to help you and have the right mission behind the company, which is only going to mean that the product gets better, solution gets better.
Yeah. What do you think the future of the back office is? Like we're building. There's partnerships that will come up to make it easier for our joint customers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years into the future, between your ambition, AI, anything else in the market. What do you think this means for founders?
I think there'll be fewer vendors to pick from. And I can steer the question into payroll somewhat selfishly, but if I look at the payroll space, there are again so many different platforms across payroll and HR, and then you see other solutions overlaid on top of that. So I was speaking to a client recently that's using a certain vendor in Germany. And that vendor is processing their payroll. They're doing all of their gross to net reports. They're producing all of their pay slips. And then they want to implement another software on top of that to give them views and controls into their payroll data. That to me is just bonkers. Like that's one of 26 countries for them. If they do that in every country, then they've right there got 52 vendors to manage. So I think it has to be consolidation, and it has to be real time processing.
I think it's as the world moves more real time, that's what gets me excited because I think Jeff Bezos says, right, like the one universal truth for him and Amazon is like your margin is my opportunity. But I think the one universal truth of almost everybody is I want to spend less time doing most things. Like I want more time back, period. And so much, as you said, is just it's batch processes or manual setups or different workflows. So I like the world in which it is more real time and it is like, probably more consolidated from an ease of use.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the same in banking. Some people a few years ago, people were saying fintech is only 1% done. Like maybe it's 2% done now, but there's still a way to go. And I think we'll see. I think we'll see everything moving near instantaneously across the stack, from money movement through payroll, through accounting, and through whatever else is in there.
I remember one of the things that we did at my first company was we were the first company ever to be able to put money into a bank account instantly. And so we worked with teams on this like reverse debit thing. And when we did that, I remember it's like in the US, you can take money out of people's bank accounts quite easily, but you could not put money into bank accounts. It's still actually quite hard. And I remember we did this and was impressed about it. And my email was just blown up. How'd you do that? What are you doing? How do we make this work? And I thought it was a really cool moment where I was in New York. I remember being in an Uber talking to the head of payments of Uber, who was like, I want to be able to push money to our drivers instantly because like their payroll, like this is important for them when they need gas or whatever. How did you do it? So I'm on the phone thing. He's like, how much do you think people would pay for this? And I was like, I don't know. Hold on. I'm in an Uber right now, whatever. And I was like, hey, how much time does it take you to get your money? And he's like, I don't know, like 3 days. This is like lame. I don't understand why it happens. Like when I need money, the car breaks down or I need gas. And I was like, how much would you pay if Uber were to give you money like as soon as you pressed a button instantly? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, would you pay a dollar? He's like, for sure. But would you pay? I'm on speakerphone now. I was like, would you pay $2? He's like, probably. Would you pay $3? He goes, in some cases, yeah, I'd probably pay $3. And I was like, all right, there you go. It's somewhere between $1 and $3 for an extra expedited fee. And they're like, great, solved. They were live in like another month with the thing. It was such a cool experience, but it gets us points of like the company is employing people, they're working, they're doing their job, and then you're getting paid, like, oh, you get paid on this day, but the money is delayed. It's still kind of crazy to me. I mean, I totally get it why the bank system, but it's still kind of crazy. Do you guys think you'll solve this?
Yeah. So if you think about payroll processing, here's a fun tidbit. In the States, people get paid bi-monthly. In most other countries around the world, it's at the end of the month. So as an employee, you're working for 30 days and then you're getting paid in arrears. And the company basically that you're working for has an obligation to you. Well, how can we start to break that down without going down like payday lending routes? We're not interested in that. So if payroll can be run instantaneously, in the case of your Uber driver, your Uber driver was probably a contractor, but if your Uber driver was an employee, in some countries they are, let's take the UK as an example, and the Uber driver wants to get their pay at the end of the shift, well, let's say Uber could run their payroll instantaneously and couple that with the technology you're talking about, get paid instantly. Like that has never been done for employees before. And there are some companies that are doing it in different regions in the world, but to be able to offer that on a consolidated basis globally is game changing, especially in a world where these jobs are getting more and more competitive. In retail, let's take the retail sector, for example. I think every 10 months, a retail worker changes jobs. It's crazy. You basically recycle your full workforce every year. And one of the benefits that the retailers want to offer is exactly what I've just described. So I think that's going to be game changing.
There's no shortage of like opportunity in this world. I'm so excited for every startup around the world. I'm excited about what you're doing. Before we wrap up, you've sort of had this inside view of two of the kind of most iconic companies, and you've survived along the way. What is it that you think is your superpower that makes people want to hire you and makes people want to keep you around?
I have a theory that at this point it might be consistency, because there are several factors that you need to be great as an operator. And I think being consistent over a decade and hopefully for a couple more decades to come is a really important factor. So being able to hire people consistently, being able to adapt to your surroundings and reinvent yourself. Every 3 to 6 months at a hyper-growth company, you need to reinvent your leadership style. You need to reinvent what people are working for and working against. So I think it's consistency, actually, which I think is a pretty boring answer to the question. But yeah, what's your answer to this question? I got to put you on the spot too.
I mean, I think your superpower is you're relentlessly focused on results. And I can't imagine a challenge where you were like, holy shit, we got to go figure this out. Dan isn't one of the first names that comes top of mind. Whatever it was, like, what's the most important thing? You just need somebody who is smart, will figure it out, will get it done. That is how I associate my experience knowing you in there. I think that's some of the rarest people in the world. I would probably say the names of the people who I've worked with that I like that, but then you'd just go poach them. So I can't afford that quite yet. All right, Dan, what is the thing that you're most excited about for the future of Deel? Like, what's the next big inflection point? What's the thing you're most excited about for 2026?
I mean, for us, it's real-time payroll processing. We're investing a ton in owning the payroll processing engine in all of the big countries that we operate in. So that is going to unlock so much for us and our customers.
Well, everybody pay attention to Deel. They literally, I can tell you firsthand from working with them, that team is insanely ambitious. They're building and shipping stuff at a pace that is almost unheard of in any software, let alone fintech. So I'm excited about what you're doing. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thanks for listening to Tech Finance with Puzzle and Turpentine. If you got value from this episode, please share it with anybody building or funding the future of technology. And please leave us a review wherever you're listening and tell me about what you want to hear more of. If you're looking for accounting software you'll actually love to power your company, check out Puzzle.io, the modern accounting platform for the AI era. Tech Finance is part of Turpentine, the awesome podcast network behind Econ 102 with Noah Smith, Turpentine VC, Complex Systems with Patrick McKenzie, and so many more.